Well, hello, that's me again. Today is the September 3rd, and if I sound a little bit coarse, I mean, pardon me, but I'm kind of still struggling with the effects and the consequences of the jet lag and the flu or cold, which I caught evidently. Finns and Vantaa, Finnish airport, has the very funny uh, propensity or habit, if you wish. They use the aggregators for people who are about to fly, and aggregators are just basically corral, surrounded with the glass walls. And before you get on the plane, they accumulate all the set of passengers which are about to fly. And as a result, you stay there for a while, and even with the open top, it doesn't help, and evidently the atmosphere there becomes extremely stuffy and hot, and that's what they did to us, as they do to any other flight, and until we started boarding. And by the time we started boarding, all of us, pretty much all 280 of us, I think, have been sweaty, and so it wasn't pleasant experience. And I think so the combination of this plus the all those winds and the air passing through you and around you, that gave me this cold. I think so it's cold. It's still not most likely flu, it's just the cold, pretty much. And that is why I sound funny. But yeah, it's a very strange thing. Finnair provides an excellent service, an excellent cruise, and I can only say positives, with the exception of the food, of course. But why they do this in Vantaa airport, I have no idea. You will not encounter anything like this in any American, Russian, or any other, or Frankfurt. You will not encounter anything like this. You just get to the boarding area, you sit comfortably, and they just call on you. You just step in. That's it. Not in Finland, and that's partially why all of us were sweating and then been thrown into this telescopic ladder, whatever they have the name of this thing, which leads you to the aircraft. And yeah, we have been pretty much all sweaty, and yeah, that's the result. So, but I'm getting better. So, and if you don't mind tolerating my coarse and funny voice, so let's begin with some news, and then we'll talk about what I've been talking about for a while now. But let's start with the things which are important, because now major Russian news outlet and actually the Iranian outlets, they report that Iran received the first couple, although nobody knows how many. Some say it's 4 actually, of the Yak-130 combat training aircraft. It is an excellent aircraft and by Yakovlev Design Bureau, which is actually capable of tuning it up for fly like any kind of the aircraft in the modern inventory today around the world. It could fly as MiG-21, it could fly as F-35, and as Su-37. Or, I mean, pardon, 30 SM. And that's where we get to the point that actually this is not accidental, and Iran definitely was in negotiation with Russia about obtaining the brand new Russian combat fighters, such as Su-30 SM or Su-35. And obviously the appearance of those now painted in the Iranian Air Force livery Yakovlev 130s is indicative of the major change in Russian attitudes towards the so-called sanction policies towards Iran. And Iran will be getting a lot of Russian military hardware, including obviously the Air Force hardware, which is, again, we don't know. Some say it's Su-30 SM, others say it's Su-35, but some people speculate, and you probably can read through this translated piece from Vzгляд, as that actually Iran will be getting 5th generation fighters, some iteration of Su-57, or who knows, maybe Su-75 checkmate, who knows, but it is there. And that brings us to the other thing, which is, of course, how to put it politely, and I'm on the record, I repeated ad nauseam. I probably already kind of have the issues with my tongue because it's been reduced through using this over and over again. It's the fact that I'm not interested in the tactical minutia. I never did. I mean, for example, I don't need to figure out how the latest Russian anti-tank missiles work. If I need to, I know where to call and ask people, and they will tell me, oh yeah, that's how it works. I mean, in the in the mode which doesn't violate any kind of the laws of secrecy or classified information. I need just fundamental physical principles on how this whole thing operates. And that is why each time I read all those people who just discuss how those things fly and blow things up, yeah, it's all fine. We know that it's happening. We know that it's Russia is, already basically won the war. And when you look now at the latest from Ukraine, you will see yourself that now basically you can get to service people who with all kinds of the serious illnesses. And I'm talking about chronic illnesses such as the serious psychiatric disorders, ulcers, and things of this nature. Because obviously the mobilization potential of Ukraine have been reduced to basically what you would observe. And if you want to understand, and I made the video actually on that, and you may take a look at General Patton's Third Army Lorraine campaign, and you would encounter there all those false grenadier divisions, and as actually American documents, and and I can always leave the link to them, and I left on many videos. Third Army was encountering such units as the regiments made out of cooks. Then they had the regiments of the totally basically deaf people. Can you imagine how you can command and control those? And then of course there was whole battalions of people with ulcers. So as you may understand, this was not a real serious fighting force, and this is exactly what is happening with Ukraine. But that brings us to the point which actually in the title of this video, and let me remind you, more than a year ago, I did this video, and this is when I started to introduce you to actually Mr. Alexander Andreevich Svechin and his strategy, their fundamental work on strategy. And remember what it was stated there: each war represents an isolated case requiring an understanding of its own particular logic, its own unique character. After that, I made several videos which were, I was reviewing his fundamental work, very important work called Strategy. And one of the reasons I was doing this, because also Mr. Gerasimov, Valery Gerasimov, the chief of the general staff of Russian armed forces, and the man of the, I would go out on a limb here and say the man of the incredible military genius, he is an avid scholar of Mr. Svechin, together with other prominent Russian strategists such as Mr. Triandafilov, who from the Tsarist times actually developed this concept of the deep operations. Yes, that those deep operations which Red Army was using, they all grew out together with the firewall and things of this nature, with the penetration along the whole front by Brusilov. A lot of it came out in the world from the World War I, and Mr. Svechin was one of those, and sadly he was persecuted during great purges. Obviously he was innocent, and later he was basically exonerated. But what is the point I'm talking about Svechin constantly? And the point is this: about a week ago, I think, the Russian RT, no, not the week ago, it's actually only 5 days ago, they published they posted their article by the people from the Department of Military History of the Academy of the General Staff, about what they called Russian Clausewitz, and the title reads that those people from the Military Academy of the General Staff about the contribution of Svechin in the development of the military art. It is a very important article about Alexander Andreevich Svechin and why Gerasimov loves him and why actually his work was translated in English, this famous Alexander Svechin strategy. And many people of real intellect and scholars, American, British, and other Western scholars paid attention to this outstanding work. And let me put it this way. When you begin to look at this, you begin to understand and how Russian army fights and prosecutes this war, special military operation. And let's start a little bit, the fundamental things. And you know what, as Russian proverb goes, that repetition is the mother of learning. So let's repeat some things which I stated before, and let's do some new things, review of Svechin's ideas. So we start with the foreword to this outstanding book by American military thinkers and American real military scholars, and look what they talk about it. It's a foreword. When speaking about the fundamental value of this outstanding work, strategy, they point out that emphasizing that the dominance of politics over strategy is universal in nature. You remember that actually it's Clausewitz and truism that the war is the continuation of the policy by other means. Svechin at the same time repeated several times that political decisions also should conform with strategy and should take into account military capabilities. A politician, pay attention, a politician must most attentively listen to the opinions of the military command and military experts and know how the military organism operates, what the military mobilization capabilities of the state are, and so on. And guess what? What I just read to you it's non-existent in the modern United States and in the modern West. First, and let's go to the original, not just the interpretation, but by the people who wrote a wonderful foreword to this Svechin's work. And here is what Svechin says, that's verbatim, and that is why it is singled out in this fundamental work in this fat, so to speak, bold font. Responsible politicians should be familiar with strategy. Not only the high command of an army must study strategy. A strategist issuing directives to the echelons, which are the direct leaders of operations, should have a clear idea of the limits which are feasible for operational art with the available resources and have a keen operational and tactical eye in order for his forces to operate under the most favorable possible conditions. In exactly the same way, a politician who sets a political goal for military operations must have an idea of what is feasible for strategy given the resources available and how politics may affect the situation for better or for worse. Strategy is one of those most important tools of politics, and even in peacetime, political calculations must to a great extent be based on the military capabilities of friendly and hostile nations. Bismarck would not have been able to guide Prussian politics so authoritatively if he had not had such a profound understanding of the situation of the theater of the war. Pardon me. As you can see yourself, here Svechin opens this door, the insight into what is happening today, especially when one considers what political elites in the United States and the combined West are. They are illiterate. You cannot get anybody who can even wrap their brains around the modern warfare, or for that matter, the warfare of the 20th century, from Ivy League. Any kind of the humanities educated or law educated guy who dominate, American politics, and I'm not talking about European politics, basically baboons running it into the ground. Those people are not capable of calculating or appreciating the strategy. And again, quoting my good colleague, Mr. Alexander Rogers, Americans don't know what strategy is. They have business plans, but strategy is a little bit different. And as you can see yourself, the issue of not only understanding the warfare, but having a proper toolkit in assessing the power of your enemy and knowing yourself. Well, I mean, it's good old Sun Tzu, know thy enemy, know thyself. So when you look at this, what do you expect? When, again, quoting General Latif, everything what those people in U.S. Congress, for example, most of them, 99.99%, I mean, know about war and warfare. They know from the entertainment industry. And even those so-called veterans like Tom Cotton, he wouldn't even be able to wrap his brains around, again, the modern warfare, because he, for all his heroic actions in Afghanistan, he doesn't understand what combined arms is. Alligators, for example, not without their own policies. If you look at the Russian political elites, if you look, for example, at the Institute of Russian Governorship, and especially when you look at the very top brass of Russian politics, not just military, surprise, surprise, most of them attend the Academy of the General Staff. And they attend it not just, sometimes you have 2-3 months courses, which you take there in terms of the mobilizational policies and things of this nature. No, many of them, for example, many of Mr. Putin's friends, like Mr. Chemezov or Mr. Sechin, they did attend the Academy of the General Staff for 2 years. So those people, while being, for example, former KGB operatives or FSB operatives, they know fundamental things which go into the strategic considerations and how military art is operating, how the strategy interacts with the operational art, and how operational art influences the strategy. And it all comes down to proper understanding of the resources. And that brings us to other thing by Svechin, which is absolutely crucial. Here what he writes about. He writes about that from this will follow all guidelines for regulating the development of the economy to achieve the required results, and the implementation of these guidelines constitutes the basic purpose of economic policy. Preparing transportation, preparing financial and economic mobilization. In order to plan the military dimension of a war plan, it is highly desirable that the economic plan contains ideas on questions such as the time that will be required to mobilize the country economically, the limits planned for the capacity of military industry, and how long industry can work at full speed until there is an inevitable loss of capacity due to overall economic exhaustion of the country. Even the roughest, most approximate judgments on this issue are of great value for clarifying the nature of a coming war for us and our possible enemies. You see, Russians use this prescription all the time. They were preparing this. Guess what? United States and NATO, they haven't been prepared. The reason they haven't been prepared, first, they do not understand this on the political level, like totally. They do not understand. They have no clue about it. They live in their make-believe virtual world of the fake economic indices and, basically entertainment representation of the American military might, where Tom Cruise, shoots down a Su-57 while flying F-14. And this is what happens. They go unprepared. They do not understand what they are economically. And I stress again, economically, United States is nowhere near as it tries to portray itself. China dwarfs United States economically in terms of real economy. Russia probably about half the size of the United States economically. And when you look at this, these guys believe that they can crush Russian economy, and they still live like Colonel Wilkerson. They live in the 80s and 90s. They believe this BS, which is being published all over the American so-called intellectual military sphere, with people having no clue what they're talking about. And again, as I already stated, U.S. Army has no experience of the combined arms operation of this scale, as is happening now in special military operations. And it's not only that. And here comes Mr. Svechin again. We review just some of the writing of this guy who influenced profoundly, together with many other people, of the incredible stature of the Russian strategic thinking. And when you go to Mr. Svechin in terms of the how he views operations, he comes up here with what basically explains to you why America cannot win wars, and it will not be able to win wars unless, of course, it goes to the nuclear threshold. But then again, who would want to live after that if you survive? And here it is. Svechin defines two types of the wars, so to speak: the wars of destruction and the wars of attrition. Well, the wars of destruction are, of course, what wars when you do it in several blows and you believe that you are so great. Like in Iraq, I mean, United States, this massive bully with incredible, pumped muscles and things, just goes out, beats the crap out of the 5-year-old kid in the sandbox in Iraq and believes that they achieved something. This is the war of destruction. We did it in a couple of the serious blows and we think that we can achieve something. No, real wars are not fought like this, and that is why Russia, Russian armed forces are doing what they are doing. It's not just the economy of the forces. This is the strategic concept which is behind Russian thinking, and Russian military history dwarfs that of the United States. Russians survived as people for almost 1,200 years because they developed this survival instinct. And again, many people still do not understand. I will remind you that Russians fight in Ukraine the combined NATO, I mean combined West. And here's what Svechin says. Like a strategy of destruction, a strategy of attrition constitutes a search for material superiority and the fight for it. But this search is not limited solely to the desire to deploy superior forces in a decisive sector. We must still create the conditions for a decisive point to exist. The very path of a strategy of attrition, which leads to the expenditure of much greater resources than a short destructive strike aimed at the heart of the enemy, is in general chosen only when a war cannot be ended by a single blow. The operations of the strategy of attrition are not so much direct stages towards the achievement of an ultimate goal as they are stages in the deployment of material superiority, which would ultimately deprive the enemy of the means for successful resistance. I mean, when you begin to read what Svechin wrote almost 100 years ago, so it becomes very clear that Russians actually fight very much when incorporating the lessons and strategic insights which he wrote in his book. And when you begin to look at the Butcher's Bill, and we can take a look at the Butcher's Bill for today, for September, we already see that we have another 2030 KIAs on the armed forces of Ukraine side, bunch of the tanks, bunch of the combat vehicles. You can see yourself that Russians are there not to defeat Ukraine. Ukraine is defeated. It's basically, as I already stated, they throw now basically simply the meat. I mean, people who are incapable of fighting. But they will throw them more and more, and Russians will kill more and more, as sad as it sounds. But Russia is not in the business of the, destruction campaign. Well, for the destruction campaign, can Russia probably do that? Oh, well, theoretically, if you mobilize a couple millions more Russians, and then, you just get those blows into the, deep into Europe, I mean, why? I mean, why? Why would you do that? But in terms of the attrition, this is exactly the mode which Russians operate now upon, and they indeed bring this material preponderance now, which NATO suddenly discovered to itself that they don't have, because Russia outproduces them on every single item which you can possibly have in the wartime production, with the exception, of course, of the aircraft carriers, but Russians do not need aircraft carriers. So, and when you begin to put it together, and when you begin to look at Svechin's writings, and when you begin to look at how Russian military operates, which of course most of the American generals or whatever, they don't understand that. They know some, those boxes and things like that, which is TOE, table of the organization and equipment, they cannot put it together, two and two, how it operates within the ideology of the army, how Russians view warfare in general. Because those people, I mean, as I already stated, those are people who grew out of this, I mean, funny little war in Gulf War, and they thought that that's the thing. It's not even close. And that's what I already stated, and I quote Lieutenant General Klokotov, the chief of the strategy department of Russian Academy of the General Staff in 1992, that you cannot use this war in Iraq, I mean, as any kind of standard. You cannot apply anything in it. I mean, apply to what? You're basically beating the, indeed, small child. And how does it, improve your view on the warfare? Here it is. This is your special military operation. And is it sad for Ukraine? Of course it is sad for Ukraine. But as I already stated last time, and I will continue to repeat it again and again and again, the main fundamental strategic issue in front of Russians, in front of Kremlin, in front of the military political top of Russia is, how far do we want to go? What do we want to have on the balance that literally just incorporate into Russia and then feed, restore, rebuild it from the ground zero, because it's completely destroyed now. Nobody knows, at least on my level, nobody will tell me, and rightly so, I'm not pretending to know, we can only speculate. And so when you look at this, it's just like, yeah, we need to wait and see, but we already see the panic and what is basically brewing inside the United States. And even today, the Atlantic, some other political guy who also knows warfare primarily from Hollywood, they all do. They actually, many of those veterans, they do it from Hollywood. And when you look at this, it's just like, and they say that, oh yeah, eventually Republicans and these Trumpists will get the Republican Party if they win the elections. Their support for Ukraine will stop. At this stage, and especially for people who really studied Russia's real military and industrial capabilities and read Svechin and how it is incorporates into Russian military education, for example, and Russian military strategic planning, they should by now get scared, because they're not going to outproduce Russia. And they're not going to win anything. It doesn't matter how much they support. I mean, they can throw whatever they want. It will be obliterated. And when you look essentially at how politically, the geopolitics, so to speak, of it is being framed, I'm on record, and again, you can quote me, generally geopolitical thought in the United States is second-rate. They're basically stuffed with the incompetence. Exceptions here and there merely confirm the rule that those people, they don't know what they talk about. And again, the reason they don't know what they talk about, because they're not taught proper history. They don't know the history of the World War II. They never incorporated, they never internalized the real lessons of the World War II, and as a result, you see what you see today, and you have this actually panic setting in, and we're gonna get closer to a resolution at some point of time, probably this autumn, but whatever Russian general staff, concede, we will not know until it happens, and it will happen, obviously. So, and this is what I wanted to tell you today, especially in regards to Mr. Svechin, and I'm going to continue to elaborate on that. And pardon me for my coughing, but as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. That will allow me to elaborate further on some things which are fundamental to our existence, and especially in terms of the warfare. And what can I say? Have a nice, longer, I would say, the Labor Day weekend. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.